Hi, this is Joe from JRX and welcome to helicopter number 5, the JRX MD902 Explorer for X-Plane 12. If you're still with X-Plane 12 and you're still flying helicopters, well done. I think that Laminar's had a tough couple of years with MSFS, but I still think this is a worthwhile platform to develop for, and I'm going to be here for some time yet. This video is effectively going to be the user guide. I'm going to show you everything that I've done to make this great aircraft. I'm going to show you how to operate it and the features that I've included. It will not be a flying lesson or any in-depth tutorials with instruments, but enough to get you going and happily flying. So before we begin, we'll go back to the very beginning. We'll do the housework, getting the aircraft installed and the controls and all the other bits and pieces needed set up, and then we'll come back and do some flying and have a look. Okay, so you've downloaded your purchase from the store. Thank you very much for buying JRX. You will have a compressed zip file. You'll note that the file size is quite meaty. It's 3.4 gig at the moment, but to be honest, almost 80% of that is liveries, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So we need to extract this file and we need to install it into your X-Plane 12, normally an aircraft, and anywhere you want within the X-Plane 12 aircraft folder structure. Once you've done that, you will see the extracted files here. I'm just going to point out a couple of things. Number one is a documents folder, and right at the very top is a README and the software license agreement. If you have a look at this, you'll get the usual software licensing agreement text, but right down the very bottom there are some links for our support pages and our video user guides. If you can't find them links, then they're in this document. Next we have the pilot handbook, 484 pages of great reading, lots and lots and lots of information about the MD902, which you can look at your leisure. And finally, the remaining documents are printable checklists, PDF format in both A4 and A5. So if you want to print your checklist, I know that a lot of people like that, they're all there. Back inside the folder structure now, you'll note that there are 29 liveries currently. There may be more when we release. There is a reason for this. It's not a very user-friendly paintable aircraft unless you can paint in 3D. I think I've made every livery that was asked for. If I haven't and your favourite one doesn't appear when we release, let me know and I will make them. I've also, for the first time, made some Sling Objects which use the standard X-Plane Sling facilities, which you can load through the weights and balance menus. Okay, so we have our aircraft files installed. We've done our first load up and we are at the first screen with the aircraft. Lots of liveries to look at. We're just going to have a quick look at the controller setup. Pretty standard for X-Plane 12 if you are an X-Plane user. All you're going to need primarily are 4 axes. I have collective assigned to my collective. I have roll and pitch, and I have the yaw axis set up. Control sensitivities and profiles are entirely down to your user preference, but throughout the whole testing phase and life of this aircraft, I've had everything over to the left, which means full control effectively from all of the controllers. We have spent a lot of time creating lots of commands for this aircraft, and I don't think there are any that I've missed. So you can browse through these at your leisure and you can set up anything that you like to any key or button on your controller. we have all of the tablet configuration options added as well. Now at the very top there is one that says auto starts. I recommend that you just leave these alone because these were made for one of the types of starts that I programmed in quite early on during the development. So best if you leave these ones and just assign everything else to the ones below. And once you've made all of your assignments and you've set up your controls, we're ready to begin. So here we are inside, and because I'm making a video, I'm just going to open up the field of view so we can see a lot more without me having to switch around too much. We can go to settings, graphics, and scroll down here and we can change the field of view. We just bring everything out. It might look a little bit odd. Again, this is a user preference item, but just so we can see more of the cockpit, we're going to open up the field of view. So this is the JRX MD902 Explorer. You'll note that we have opted for the traditional cockpit layout from the older style aircraft. I have spoken to V-Sky Labs and they've gone for a more modern approach, which is good for us because we've got lots of options now. We can have the best of both worlds. Every gauge, switch, nut and bolt has been custom made from scratch from a blank 3D screen. There are no legacy X-plane gauges installed here. The only third-party item that we have used, because I just didn't know how to make it, is the KLN90B, and this is a standalone module, freeware, free to use by everyone or anyone. I did seek specific permission from the creators to use it and they're happy for me to do so. So this in itself is a fully functional GPS, and I really don't know how to use it. I don't have time to learn things like that, but our testers assure me it works, and it works very well, and one of them particularly liked it. So that is one of the 3 GPSs that we have. We also have the GNS530 down here, and I'm just going to talk about these two. These two do not like each other, in that if this is set to primary, this will affect the operation of this. For ease of use, I've set this as default as a secondary GPS. If you want to pursue the KLN930B, and there are some good online tutorials on how to use it for all platforms. I think it's available as well in MSFS. You can set this as your primary GPS and use this, but just be aware that the 530 will not function properly whilst this is in primary mode. The next thing that we want to look at is the aircraft role and the equipment that we want to use, and everything is in one place. We have a tablet and the button is here. If we click this, this will bring up the aircraft role and configuration page. Now I've made 3 roles for this aircraft: HEMS, emergency medical services, utility, and VIP transport. By default we go to utility, and this can have 2 packs which you can turn on and off there. Let's have a quick look outside, and there's our packs, and back in. We have the HEMS. By default we have 1 crew medic, and we have a HEMS casualty that we can onboard and offboard when we're on the ground. At the moment we have no casualty. And finally we have the VIP transport, which is a 4-seat configuration, slightly more luxurious than the other 2, and again we can have the options of 1 to 4 packs. There we go, drinking beer. So normally on my other aircraft I have limited what you can change when you're on the ground only, but in this case, because I know that a lot of people like to make videos and they don't want to land to add wire cutters, for example, I've relented, and you should be able to change, apart from the HEMS casualty, everything on the fly. So you don't have to land, you can switch roles and you can change any options that you like. There will be some crossover with my startup and shutdown tutorial video, so I might mention the same thing that's already been mentioned on the video. That's probably because I think it's important. But for this section here, the role and the aircraft equipment, I've added what's called persistence. So whatever you set here will stay until you unset it, even when you change flights or even you exit X-plane. When you come back, if you chose HEMS with the loudspeaker and the medic, they will always be there. We do have persistence on most of the items. Let's speak about some of the other items on the tablet options. We've spoken already about the HEMS casualty. You can set your own vibration level, but in real life this is a really smooth aircraft when it's operating in the air. We do have vibrations 0 to 3, 0 being off and 3 being the maximum, but you're only going to see marginal vibrations under 20 knots. I've set a reminder here of the maximum takeoff weight, 2,500 kilograms or 5,212 pounds. When the battery is on, you will have a calculated readout there. That's just for your information. And I've also added a reset options and weights, like in the B0105, and I think in the B407 we've done that, because there's a few internal calculation issues with X-Plane 12. So whatever we select can be cleared down if we click reset options and weights. I've included a shortcut to the weight, balance and fuel menu here, and you can see all of the stations that are set. Again, you can override the calculated or program weights from the tablet menu here, but you can only go down. So if you choose PAX 1, this is going to set 52 kgs. You can come here if you want and turn it down. You can't make it heavier than 52 kilograms. If you have any problems or any discrepancies with weight and balance, click the reset, then you can come back here and check. Touch wood, everything has been working okay during testing, so you shouldn't really have to do that. For the pilots that own the RXP GTN750, we have options built in as standard with this model. If we look below, we have the Bendix King radio stack. If you don't want that and you want to place your RXP there, then we choose this option, and the radio stack's been replaced with the RXP. I'll just show you a little bit more about that later when we power up the aircraft for the first time. And finally on the tablet we have some buttons. The home and the direct to button are used for the RXP GTN750 when it's displayed here, and the main function button will cycle through some other options we have with the tablet, and they currently are: we have checklists, engine pre-start, automatic start, engine run-up, engine shut down before takeoff, etc, etc. We also have integrated the AVI tab, great piece of free software. If you don't have it, that will work off the bat once you have it installed. And this page here is for the RXP GTN that you'll see when we power on the battery. And then back to the configuration screen. Let's take a look at some of the aircraft equipment now. As I mentioned before, dynamic weights. Weight should change when you choose or select or deselect, and persistence, it should stay for the duration until you turn it off. So by default, this is how it normally loads up. We do have aircraft covers, tie downs, remove before flights. That button will only work when the rotor brake is switched off and the aircraft, all the doors are closed and everything else. Okay, obviously the pilots there are standard and you can't change that, but what you can change are whether the pilot wears a helmet or a headset. Now that's important because that's got a lot to do with sound attenuation, and the same for the co-pilot. If you have the pilot without a helmet or headset, it's pretty noisy inside the aircraft. The helmet option will provide the highest level of sound attenuation and the headset will be less. So you can actually choose your sound attenuation depending whether the pilot's wearing a helmet or a headset. We have options to fly with the co-pilot, and again with or without helmet or headset, helmet and headset. We can have the doors off, very noisy. You'll know as I change options you get a little graphical representation on these two here. We do have a great cargo hook, not modelled by me but one of my co-3D modelers who's done a lot of work on the exterior equipment. And when we choose the cargo hook option we should have the releases and the weight gauges. Cargo mirrors. Now I'm going to talk about mirrors. I don't think it's possible to make a real mirror in X-Plane without using a camera. Now if I was to add a camera here and here we'll probably lose about 80 FPS. So although they look nice, I don't think that I can make cargo mirrors fully functional. Standard aircraft wire cutters, top and bottom down here. Bear paws for snow and soft ground, we've added them. Probably better to see when we're in the air. Floats, fully functional, so if you're flying over water you can have the emergency float option. Packed away. We'll talk about deploying them when we're in the air with some power. Loudspeaker. Now this aircraft does have a loudspeaker. They have a siren and they have the ability for the pilot to talk to people, normally civilians on the ground, and we have a functional version of that. When the battery is on, when we do the power up later, I'll show you, but there are a couple of switches here. We have a PA, public address system, and we do have a siren. Now if you have a look on YouTube you can see the old G London MD902 using its siren. So it is a thing, and I've seen a video of one of the pilots talking about it and how they use it. Aircraft searchlight. Let's come outside, tucked under there. It's not really compatible with the cargo hook, so really either or. Potentially could move it, but we'll see. And the packs that we've spoken about. So I think we have covered everything tablet related. We might come back later on maybe just to have a look at one or two things if required. So there we go, that is the tablet, the aircraft roll the aircraft equipment, the inner options, the PAX display, the RXP options, and the weight and balance menu. I will update this here as we roll out updates, so that's a quick glance at your current version. So there we go, that is everything so far tablet related. Okay, before we go for the first power up, I'm just going to speak about gated switches. These were mentioned in the startup and shutdown tutorial. So there's a couple of switches on the aircraft that need 2 actions to operate. That's the engine control switches, the fire extinguisher, and the main battery switch. Once you've done it once, it's very easy, so we're going to click the top zone and then forward, and top zone and backwards. Gated switches, almost exactly the same. Click 1, operate. No action there because the gate's on. Click off. Okay, first power up. We are in the aircraft. Let's turn on the battery. Every single power cycle, the IIDS and the electronic instruments will go through a built-in test. It takes a few seconds, and then once complete you will see the displays. There we go. Let's have a look at the IIDS. So as I mentioned before in the startup and shutdown tutorial, the IIDS is split into 2 screens. On the left screen we have engine, transmission, engine and fuel system. There are some annunciators here. And on the right hand screen we have outputs, NR, MP, torque and EGT. If there's an event in the aircraft or a warning, there will also be a text display up here. These buttons are not functional except for the display button. If we click once, the display will permanently hold and show the current values for the T's and P's. Display is a LED screen test, and display again takes us back to the normal operating mode. The fuel quantity and the fuel indicators are shown here, and this image tells me that the fuel boost pumps are off because we have the broken white line. We can turn them on to demonstrate left boost and right boost, and now you can hear the pumps and we have the lines. If the fuel shut-off switches are on, then we will have an indication like this where it's just gated out and the engine won't start because there is no fuel going to the engine. Okay, we're going to do a quick start. This has already been covered in the startup and shutdown tutorial. And we just need to ensure that the following are in place before we start. Rotor brake off, battery key on, twist grips in normal, left and right fuel boost on. Obviously we have battery power already, and we're just going to click once and to idle. Can have a look at the IIDS whilst we wait for our 65% NR. There we go. We can start the second engine. You can turn on the generators left and right. So that's what I call the quick start. I've been doing that for the last year or so just to save time. There are the full checklist starts, which are all shown on the startup and shutdown tutorials. Okay, before we bring the avionics on, I'm just going to backtrack slightly and demonstrate the speaker that we have. You need to have the speaker chosen in the options, and down to the pilot's left are two switches: public address.
Clear the area. Do not approach the aircraft. Keep clear. Do not approach the aircraft. Keep clear. Clear the area. Do not approach the aircraft. Keep clear. Do not approach the aircraft.
And we have the siren. There we go, that is a thing on the real MD902. Okay, I'm going to bring on the avionics now. I'm just going to show you a couple of things that will happen. Avionics switch on, the radios will come on, the GNS will power up, the attitude indicators will spool up. You can quick erect these, fast erect by holding. Hold until it's centered. Hold until it's centered. Nice. Now we're just going to demonstrate the RXP GTN750 if you own that module. So we're switched to that mode. So we have the RXP down here. But my demonstration point was the fact that you can have it also on the tablet. There we go. So if you're an RXP owner, you do have options. You can have it installed correctly there, or you can have it up front and center. So I think the best course of action now is for me to get airborne, and we continue the cockpit tour in the air so we can see things actually working. So let's take off. Okay, as we're climbing up to altitude, I'm just going to demonstrate the sound attenuation options that you have. The pilot has his helmet on. Now if we switch that out to the headset, you'll know slightly louder. And the options with none. And let's just drop the doors off very quickly. And there we go. There are some additional sound tweaks that you can make. If we go to the sound settings, we do have the sound sliders which are attached to the Fmod engine in this version, so you can do any tweaks there. We have done some coding for the pilot and co-pilot custom head animation. They won't follow the camera, but they should naturally follow the flow of the aircraft as it banks and turns and ascends and descends. Let's see if I can demonstrate that in some way. So we're just going to take a look outside at the aircraft actually flying in the air. I've added almost all of the flight configuration options so you can take a look for yourself. Let's take a look at the custom external lighting. I'll just bring the lights down. And we can take a look at a couple of liveries. I'm not going to cycle through them all. Okay, there we go. That's an overview of the exterior model in flight. Okay, we're cruising at altitude 6,000 feet, heading east over northern Scotland, and we'll have a look at some of the panel instruments now, starting with the Copilot. Again, this is not a flight lesson or any instrument instruction. I'm just demonstrating what we have made for this aircraft. And again, everything is custom made. So on the Copilot side, we have the airspeed indicator, attitude indicator, altimeter and vertical speed indicator. To the lower left we have the radar altitude with the adjustable bug and test switch. We have an HSI which is tuned to nav 2. In the middle here we have the ELT, emergency location transponder. Unfortunately I don't think these are active in X-Plane. And we have the compass, free and slave switches. At the very top we have two annunciators. One is for VNE, maximum speed, that will come on when you exceed 140 knots. And the other one is used for the KLN90B, which isn't currently active. Just to the lower right on the Copilot side we have the Aux fuel gauge. This aircraft is carrying an additional 200 pounds and you can pump this fuel into the main tank, ideally when the main fuel tank is below 700 pounds, operated with a switch here. You'll see the lamp come on. You should see a rise in the main fuel and a decrease on the Aux fuel gauge. Next up are the items in the sensor. Come up first, we have a wet compass standby, the KLN90B, which we've already spoken about. These annunciators are non-operational, they are to do with the KLN90B. We have the IIDS. I can show you the current T's and P's if we click that, which you know about already. Below the IIDS we have a standby attitude indicator and the GNS 530. This is the standard X-Plane module with its custom surround. Over to the right hand side we have a small annunciator panel which is primarily for autopilot items. If we go to the display test you can see the items there: autopilot, SAS, pitch, roll and yaw, VCS issues, inverter, the VCS fans, low airspeed and the landing light indicator. Just below that we have the flight timer, which can be stop, restart, stop, reset. There is also a button on the collective called takeoff timer, and again that will operate the flight timer. And at the very bottom of the central panel we have the aircraft registration ID, and we also have the vertical stabilizer indicator gauges, and these are showing you the deflection of the two fins at the rear of the aircraft. Let's take a look at the pilot side now. Some of these instruments are quite complex and they're a whole video in themselves. This is only a brief overview of the instrumentation that I've made and its functionality. At the top we have again the same two annunciators, the VNE and the other annunciator for the KLN. Airspeed indicator. To the right of that we have the EADI, the electronic attitude direction indicator. This has also AP information, speeds and some other items around the side. Down to the left we have the ESIS, the GH31000, which is an electronic standby instrument system. This will give you all of the big six flight information. We can change the pressures, and if you click the M button we can switch between US and metric values. If we click the center we should go back to standard pressure. Coming over to the right we have the KAV485, which is a dual altimeter and vertical speed indicator. Again with this we can change from US to metric. There's a small button here. If we would want to make a flight level change, let's go up to 7,000. We have coarse and fine height adjustments. We've got a bit of chop going on. Let's bring this down to 7,000. Let's bring the bug up. We'll go 600 foot per minute and we click engage. And you can see the aircraft is rising there. This is controlled by the autopilot panel down here. And you can see that the altitude is armed. And we get an altitude armed here. So that's the KAV485. We do have options as well on this to change the pressures. And we can click for standard. 29 and 92. Okay, in the center we have the EHSI, Electronic Horizontal Situation Indicator. This is a complex beast that we've made based on the real Bendix King one and used within the limitations of X-Plane. On the left hand side we have the modes effectively. If you want to declutter and just have a standard compass, we can choose the heading mode. The nav button will cycle through nav 1, nav 2, ADF and GPS. Like so. We can change our course and all the other good stuff. ADF, we don't have any ADF tuned in. We have GPS, we don't have any routes or any GPS destination set. And then we have a combination. And then back to VOR nav 1 where you can do any electronic navigation. The HSI button is a slightly different display. I've added some weather for this part of the demonstration, so you're going to get the weather radar. If we cycle the arc button, it will turn off the weather radar, back on, and TCAS as well. So we can cycle between WXR, weather radar and TCAS with that. There is an overlay of the airports, VORs, NDBs and waypoints. And we can declutter them as required with these buttons here. Like so. On this instrument we have the heading indicator. Again, this is controlled by the autopilot. We can make a turn. There is a brightness annunciator for this panel only. And as I showed before, we have the course button. There's lots to play with and learn with this instrument. Below this we have the rheostat brightness for the ADI above, and we have a decision height knob where we can set our decision height, which is also tied into the radio altimeter that I mentioned earlier. Coming down to the lower left we have a standby altimeter, and to the lower right we have an OBS compass tuned to the nav 1 radio, and that is the pilot side equipment, primarily electronic for navigation. Okay, I'm just going to explain the best I can the no-go and go lights. These are for Cat A takeoffs, and we have a takeoff decision point, a TDP. So when we take off, a TDP is defined at a point 8 seconds after takeoff. So when we're on the ground, the amber light is on and the green light is off. When we lift off, 8 seconds after liftoff, it will change from amber to green, and that is defined as the takeoff decision point, and if all is well and all your engines are running, you can continue. If there is something wrong and you cannot continue, then you abort your landing, and that is the best way I can describe the no-go and the go lights. I think that is everything from the main panel covered. If there's something I've forgotten or you have any questions, obviously you can reach out to me on the JRX forums. So we can move on now to the upper pedestal. Okay, let's have a look at the pedestal. On the upper we have intercom bus selection, not simulated in X-Plane. Below that we have the COM audio selection. COM 1, COM 2 I think are the only two that are really active inside X-Plane, and we have the tone selection as well. Nav 1, Nav 2, ADF and marker beacons. Down below that we have a fuel calculation placard, which is a visual guide of how many minutes you may have left in your flight. This is a visual representation of the fuel bar system. Below this was mentioned in the startup and shutdown tutorial. If you click this when on the ground at cold and dark, it will bring the aircraft up to a state to fly via an automatic start. To the right of that we have the autopilot panel, and if you're familiar with flight in general, you'll know what these do. Heading hold, nav hold, approach, back course, altitude hold and altitude select, vertical speed. The IIDS is not active, the auto throttle, it doesn't really work well so far. I may look at that at a later time. The autopilot master switch, effectively the SAS. The flight director is not active, and when we do have GPS routes programmed in, we can have the GPS button active. Just below the AP pad we have some sunglasses. These are a shortcut for the X-Plane sunglasses option. Click, everything dims down a little bit, and the pilot and co-pilot are wearing their glasses. Coming over to the right upper pedestal, we have the Bendix King radio stack, a transponder, standard X-Plane commands here. If you use VATSIM or any online flight, then you can click the ident when requested, and that will send your code. Bendix King COM 1 and COM 2 radios, coarse and fine adjustments, flip to change frequency, and the same for nav 1 and nav 2. Just in the gap we have some pens. If you click that, it's a shortcut for the X-Plane map. And finally below that we have the ADF radio, again coarse and fine adjustments, flip to change frequency if you are using ADF navigation. And just below that we have the battery key. It won't shut down the engines whilst you're flying, but you do need to have it to the on position when starting. Coming down the line we have the engine control panel. This has been demonstrated on the startup and shutdown video. We do have the train function active, which is used for one engine operation. So if I go from fly to train on engine 1, we'll have a look. We now have reduced power on that engine. The IIDS has changed, the torques come down, the EGTs come down and the engine 1 oil pressure is lowered. So this is simulating one engine operation, and it's the same for the right hand engine. Finally, on the engine control panel, we have the overspeed test. This is a ground test that you do as per the checklist. I think you should see a split in the torque values when on the ground. Below the engine control panel, we have the fuel system panel, left and right boost switches, emergency fuel shutoff, which we won't be operating whilst we're in the air, and the fire extinguisher bottle discharge, primary and alternate. Unfortunately, in X-plane, if you fire off a fire extinguisher, it will shut down the engine, so try to do this with only one engine and you'll come to the ground quite quickly. So you should really operate it on the ground where possible. The right and left boost switches, if you turn them off in flight, there is still fuel going to the engine. You're not going to crash, but they are boost pumps designed to assist the engine, and you definitely need them for the start. Below the fuel panel, we have the electrical master, which we briefly touched on, avionics master switch, left and right generator, and the main battery switch. Okay, I've just changed the outside lighting because the next panel is the lighting control panel. So we have standard strobe, position and beacon, which we've seen already outside. There is an area floodlight for the front cab and the cockpit. Let's just demonstrate that. Let's have a look. Up here is a light, and we need to select both. And we have a lamp in the back as well. Also with that, behind the pilot's head, if it's completely dark, we have a utility lamp which can be red or white. The click zones are just to the left and the right. And although I didn't invent it, we have the X-plane torch as well. I think I've got a key set for that. This is really useful. You can find the X-plane torch in the command menus. Back to the panel. We have the lighting rheostats, which is a four-way. Let's just four-way control for console, flood, IIDS, and the instrument back lighting. You can just set this as required. And finally, the lighting master. This is a master dimmer, so any instrument that's backlit, when this is on, it will dim them. So if you're coming into land or you're having problems seeing outside, you can dim everything down at the flick of a switch. Let me see if I can show you this. It's here. Let's get everything in the background so you can see on, off, on, off. That's the internal lighting. Okay, continuing down the panel under the lighting control, we have the utility panel, hydraulic test switch. There's a checklist item when you're on the ground, pitot heat, integrated particle separator, and the left and right VSCS switches, which are for the motors in the tail fins. These are a persistence item, which means it will remember your last position. If they're off, we should get a warning on the IIDS. If you see this left and right stabilizer fail, it means that the VSCS switches are off. Above that we have the air conditioning. Although it's quite loud in the cockpit, these actually do make a noise. And I've added to the windscreen the new X-Plane thermal de-icing function. So if you are in icing conditions, if you switch the AC vent to high and the cab heat to override, that should demist the windscreen. I'm not going to try and get it iced up to demonstrate, but it does work. And the final items on the centre pedestal are the circuit breakers, and these are not active in this version. I did do it for the B0105, but I've decided not to take it that one step further so far with this aircraft. Finally, on the pedestal items, we have a small extension off to the right where we house our Hobbs meter, the PA and siren switches that I spoke about earlier, the float and hook arm switches, and the wiper controls. We obviously need some rain to see them in action, but they do work, and we have included the rain effects in this version. And I think before we move on to flight controls, I have mentioned everything switching and panel related. Again, if I haven't and there's something you want to know about, then you can reach out to me for that. Okay, let's have a look at the flight controls. We'll start with the collective. Both sets of controls for the pilot and co-pilot are identical on each side. So on the collective, we have the HVR and landing light switch. This is a three-way switch, or two-way, three if you include off, HVR, and landing with HVR. The landing lamp can be extended and retracted with this China hat switch here. Next to that we have the searchlight. The searchlight can be rotated up, down, left and right. We have the yaw sync, which in the sim doesn't really do much. This will turn the yaw damper on and off. EEC reset doesn't have any real function within the sim. The takeoff and go around button is a standard X-Plane toga command. And we have the COM selector. And as I mentioned earlier, the takeoff timer. Let's speak about the twist grips. These are not throttles in the conventional sense that a helicopter normally has. These are used to control fuel. When we're on the ground, we can switch to the off position and operate the start to perform a vent run. But when the engine is running, it's not possible to turn these from normal to off. In real life, you can do it, but you need force in excess of 40 pounds to switch them off. They are required for the start in the normal position, and then once the engine is started, they will stay that way. And these are another persistent item in that when you set them, they will stay until you turn them off. Let's have a look at the Cyclic. The buttons here are for the hook release. I will demonstrate that later on when I add the cargo hook in. Standard trim commands up, down, left and right. This is the aircraft trim. the float deploy. On the side we have an autopilot disengage button, and the trigger is set to press to torque. Okay, next is the demonstration of the emergency floats. You need to have the floats chosen as a equipment option. We have floats there. And we have the floats outside. To deploy the floats, we need to go to the float arm. Enable, and on the Cyclic we have the float deploy button. Press that and have a look outside. And to pack them away, very easy, float arm switch off and just press the button once and they should have gone. I spoke earlier on in the video about I made some Sling Objects. I don't really use them that much in X-Plane, and if you have never used them before, I'll show you how to add a Sling Object. It might disrupt this flight slightly, but we'll give it a go. So we need to go to the aircraft configuration, customize, weight, balance and fuel, and down here we have a sling load section. We can do select new. You can browse to any sling object, but I will choose one that I made. And let's choose the diesel drums. I've put a weight there as well. You do not need to set the weight yourself because it's included in the file. So hopefully we're going to see £1,700 when we select this. And it's the diesel drums object. And then open. And there we go. We have £1,700 set there. You can raise or lower that. We'll choose done. And apply changes. And there they go. It is disrupting our flight. Let's just see if we can stabilize. Obviously quite a lot of drag on that. Now if we look down, we have the gauges. These are the value times 10, so £1,780 worth of force on that. And let's see if we can take a look outside. So that is the X-Plane Sling Objects. I think you can go to the org file section and find other objects that people have made, and you can browse to them and load them. So to drop an object, and when you drop this object it will stay where it is. We just need to go to hook arm, turn on, and click the hook release button, which will probably again disrupt the flight. There we go. That's the object gone, and we get a warning on the IIDS that the cargo hook is open. Just a side note on this, every time we close the cargo hook the load will reattach, which can be quite problematic. And if you need to stop that or get rid of the load, you need to go back into aircraft configuration. We can do that through the tablet here. So there, and there's an option remove slung load. That's now gone. Click done and apply changes, and we should be back to normal. Okay, let's speak a little bit about performance of the aircraft. This is not a super fast aircraft. We have sent it out to a current MD902 pilot, and he come back with some excellent feedback and advice, primarily to do with torque settings and performance. I've tuned this based on his figures at maximum gross weight at 1,000 feet. Anything above or below, higher or lower, will give slightly varying values, which is good. So the maximum continuous torque is 100%. You can run up to 100% for as long as you like, and everything should stay normal. I'll give you a few ballpark torque to speed settings. Again, very ballpark. So at max gross weight in ground effects, you should be seeing 85 to 88% torque in the hover. 56% torque will give around about 95 knots. 75% will give around about 120, and 92% torque will give you around 125. There's very little difference between 92 and 100%, and the aircraft will not go much faster. There are some limitations with the torque. Takeoff 5 minutes only, 101 to 110%. If you look at the IIDS, we're effectively talking about the yellow range, so we can happily, for 5 minutes at least, sit in that range. 111 to 124%, which will be the start of the red range coming up. Round about there, 10 seconds only. And I have added failures for this. There is a sneaky little clock sitting in the background counting up every time you go out of range, and when the limitation is exceeded, there will be a chance of an engine failure, one or both. Your first indication will be chip detection on the annunciator, and then if you continue to ignore it, then it's a one-way ticket, auto rotation down to the ground in most cases. To prevent people flying at maximum torque all the time, which is what one of our testers done, I have put in a limitation on that. Okay, I think we've covered enough for the JRX MD902 Explorer aircraft orientation. If you have any questions or requests, you can reach out to me on the JRX forums, and I will do my best to help you out. But until next time, goodbye.